Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And on our panel here, the Shadow Home Secretary, key Jeremy Corbyn ally, Diane Abbott, a Conservative MP new to the House of Commons in 2015, James Cleverly, the SNP leader in Westminster, Angus Robertson, the Daily Mirror online writer, Fleet Street Fox, alias Susie Boniface, and Jeff, I'm the only Conservative voting comedian in Britain, Norcott. Now, as ever, you can join in the debate, of course, on Facebook, on Twitter, or by texting us on 83981. Just before we came on air, I had an email from somebody saying, please not Trump and please not Brexit. I have to disappoint you. Our audience overwhelmingly wants to talk about Brexit and about Trump. We'll start with Trump, with a question from Crystal Tracy, please. Crystal.
Should our government turn a blind eye to Trump's controversial policies in the interests of renewing our special relationship with the US?
A blind eye to controversial policies. James Cleverly, your Prime Minister is on her way there now, has arrived.
Yes, she's now arrived. Well, the short answer is no. We absolutely mustn't turn a blind eye, whether it comes from the President of the United States of America or from anyone else. Now, we are long-standing friends of America and they are long-standing friends of ours, and we have to make the relationship with the elected head of state of that country work. But Theresa May has a reputation for straight talking, telling people perhaps some truths that they don't like to hear, and I have no doubt that she will have a very frank conversation with the President of the United States of America. But if you're hoping for some Love Actually type moment, I think you're probably disappointed, because as friends and allies, we probably do our criticism in private and supportive comments in public.
She did say on the plane on the way over to a reporter, haven't you ever noticed sometimes opposites attract? So maybe you are in for a love.
Well, I'm confident that the Prime Minister and the President will have a professional and close working relationship. Perhaps not quite as intimate as Tony Blair and George W. Bush, but I'm sure she'll make it work.
All right, well, let's deal with some of the controversial policies and the problems in renewing the relationship. Diane Abbott, what do you think the Prime Minister should do? How should she treat the President?
America's a long-standing ally, and whichever party was in government would have to work with them on things we agree. But it's not so much a question of turning a blind eye to Donald Trump's policies. It's that we cannot turn a blind eye to his values. This is a man who, even compared with other right-wing Republican presidents, is quite extraordinary. This is a man who talks about grabbing women by the pussy. This is a man who wants to stop Muslims entering the US, all Muslims. And this is a man who says, contrary to everything the army and the security services know, that torture works. What policies that Trump wants to put forward is primarily a matter for him and the American people. But on our values, I think British values that I think we should all share, I don't think we should give ground, even in order to get these so-called trade deals. Some things are not for sale.
Susie Boniface.
Well, in answer to Crystal's question, no, you don't turn a blind eye, and I hope she's keeping Trump at arm's length and not just out of grabbing distance genuinely at arm's length, because we have to go and talk to him. We have to deal with him. There are 1 million jobs in this country that rely on American firms. There are about 1 million jobs in America that rely on British firms. We both do an awful lot of trade, so it's worth billions. Just because as a new and slightly crazy Oompa Loompa in the White House doesn't mean that we should stop talking to him altogether. We have to keep that going for pragmatic reasons, for the interest in our citizens here and the citizens abroad. But you have to consider how history is going to judge this further down the road. We're all stuck at the moment in his first week of, this, what I saw called today a fire hose of news, of just this astonishing stuff that keeps coming out of the White House. But you've got to think about what's going to happen when it's all over. At some point, Donald Trump is either going to be impeached, he's going to lose an election in 4 years, or he will have to leave after 8 years at the end of the second term when he has to go gracefully, as Obama just did. Now, how do you think he's going to go? How is it going to end? What's history going to do? I personally think the military will have to chisel his teeth out of the Oval Office desk to get him out of there. He's not going to go quietly. It's going to be very ugly. And in the long term, history's going to look at Theresa May and say, was she a second Maggie or was she a second Neville Chamberlain? Simple as that.
OK. Angus Robertson.
Well, I think the first thing that people will reflect on is the very unseemly way in which she's been keen to be the first foreign leader to walk into the White House and to meet President Trump. I think every moderate mainstream politician in the world recognises that it's important to have a good relationship with the United States and with the office of the President of the United States. But let's just take one.
Sorry, you're saying she shouldn't have gone. Do you think she should not have accepted an invitation?
Just one moment.
Well, no, but you started by saying that. Do you mean she should have rejected an invitation to go?
On the basis of what has been said about torture alone, I would have thought that the Prime Minister should use her leverage. We are told, aren't we, that Britain has a special relationship with the United States. Well, if it has a special relationship, I would hope it would be done on the basis of two states that do not torture. And if that's the case, if the President were to give an assurance that he will not go ahead with what he is actively considering to do, which is to reintroduce torture as a policy by the CIA, the reopening of black sites, an extraordinary rendition, that is the kidnapping of people and flying them around the world. If the UK has a special relationship, I would call on the Prime Minister to get an assurance that the US will not go ahead with torture before meeting the President of the United States.
But he's never going to do it. He's never going to happen.
OK, you sir. Let's hear from one or two others and then come to you.
I'll say, first of all, I think that special relationship got damaged so much over the last 8 years under Obama that Theresa May's really got to go over there and rebuild that special relationship. To say that we've already got that is completely wrong. We don't have that. So to even suggest that she shouldn't go over and start building that relationship, especially when we've got to look at future trade deals and things like that, it's just stupid.
And in your view, it got destroyed under Obama because of what?
That relationship over the last 8 years is Obama has never really been that interested in the British people and British culture, especially he's never been a fan, and then especially before Brexit, back of the queue. Sorry, but
Jeff Norcott. I'll come to you up there. Yes.
Well, I think that no matter what job you do or what side of the political divide you are, just have some empathy with Theresa May that this was in her calendar. I don't think anyone is sitting there going 2 sleeps till lunch with the Trumps. To be honest, I'm just speculating. But I agree with the majority of what people say. It's something that she has to do. Brexit or no Brexit, I think the likelihood of a hard Brexit makes that even more imperative. I try and think, as the non-politician and non-journalist on the panel, what would I do? I mean, he's a notoriously thin-skinned person. The idea that you can just go straight in and criticise him off the bat doesn't seem realistic. I mean, Germany aren't getting a call back here. The best they can do is like his tweets and hope to curry favour. So how do you get in there? How do you get a seat at that table? If it was me, and this isn't great, this isn't good, this isn't going to sound nice, but I would just butter him up, to be honest. I would compliment him. I'd arrive, I'd say, your hair looks great, Donald. Is it me, or is the White House bigger since you got here? And only once you've got if you want somebody to speak truth to power, you've got to have the ear of power first. Then, down the line, later on, in a couple of days, you say, you know what, mate, could you just dial it down on the hate speech? And I think she, of all world leaders at the moment, is the person that could possibly do that.
OK. The woman up there. Yes, Elaine.
Do you think Putin and Trump's special relationship will supersede Theresa May and Trump's special relationship?
What do you think?
That is a very, very good question. Angus takes a nobly naive position. I adore him for it. But ultimately, President Trump is going to make international relationships that he believes are in the best interest of the United States of America. Now, if we are not sat across a table with him, if the Prime Minister's not sat across the table with him, as our primary military ally in the world, as our second largest trade partner in the world, making our relationship work, he will go looking for other relationships. And it's entirely feasible that one of those relationships might be between him and Vladimir Putin.
He's already got that relationship.
Yeah, and it's not a relationship I am massively comfortable with. I think it's a very, very good point.
And is she going to come back with a trade deal? Diane Abbott.
Well, sorry.
Susan said that Susie stopped. She said that we should not stop. We shouldn't stop talking to him. We shouldn't talk to him. Nobody is talking about stopping talking. That's exactly what I said at the beginning. But on this question of trade deals, which everyone is using as an excuse why we have to suck up to him, let's be clear. This country has hardly any trade negotiators because most of our trade negotiations was done through the EU. And remember Trump's slogan, America first. We'll get trade deals, all right, but what sort of trade deals? Trade deals which will open up our NHS to American corporate health. Trade deals which will drive down our environmental standards. You'll get deals, but whether people will like the deals when we get them is another thing.
The woman there, the second row.
You're saying that Theresa May should say what they want to hear, but that's a lot of my whole problem with Theresa May. Be it with Brexit, she's just saying what she thinks we want to hear, but she's not actually telling us what's happening. She's going to do it as well with Trump. She's going to go over there, you know, do a bit of toing and froing about what she thinks we should hear about Trump, but not actually be decisive. I'd like a Prime Minister who's telling me what's going on, where she actually stands, instead of playing her cards all over the table.
If it was you, what would you say? If it was you in the...
What would I say? I'd be strong on my values. I don't think we're like this weak country that just have to suck up to America. We've got to stand for what we believe in, be it climate change, be it anti-torture. We can't just hide away.
But you've got a million jobs in this country that depend on him being in a good mood with us. Our Trident missiles, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, half of them we rent from America. I would love it if we could go over there and our Prime Minister could go, no, Trump, stop. You know, we're Britain. This is just not the way we do things. Please pack it in, and we're not going to suck up to you. We're not going to kiss your big, white, wrinkly bum. That's enough now. But we have to be pragmatic as well.
Sounds like the kind of language he would understand.
Yeah.
You sir, on the gangway.
Thank you. I have to agree with the gentleman on the left who spoke earlier about the culture that had been created under Barack Obama. Now we're focusing on the ideas of immigration and Mexico and the war. But do you not think this culture of apathy was built up under Barack Obama because of his flip-flopping on issues like gay marriage? You know, as an openly gay man, and as I found it bizarre that a Harvard professor was sitting there having to sort of, in 2008, you know, have difficulty supporting that kind of human right. Do you not think he created a culture of apathy in the US that ultimately led to Donald Trump anyway? I'm kind of wondering why people are that surprised that we've kind of got George W. Bush Mark II.
There's one other question on Trump we've got. I'd like to take it. Charles Harris, it's your question.
If the government policy in the UK is to reduce illegal immigration, why is Donald Trump's wall so controversial? So,
the government wants to cut immigration. What's controversial about a wall?
Well, Frank, the impossibility of building it. I mean, I've already said there may be some fences. I think that's a good metaphor for when you dilute any idea. There may be some fences. I think that, you know, the idea... I mean, I'm sure we get on to this. I voted Leave. I think that there is a dialogue around having controls on immigration, and there's a rampantly xenophobic dialogue that Donald Trump is entering into. And I think what the wall has become is it's become a metaphor for a state of mind with him, and that I think is the problem. If it was just one or the other, but the whole package with Donald Trump is alarmingly xenophobic.
Yeah, it's not. It's not just about relationship with Mexicans. It's about stopping all Muslims going to the United States. And what worries me is that we're seeing a very intolerant language coming into politics. Whoever was responsible at whatever point, it is not a new thing, unfortunately, xenophobia and narrow-mindedness, but there's a lot of it, unfortunately, in politics. Now, it seems to me when we're talking about the policy of Donald Trump or the debate on these islands, I think regardless of where we stand, and in our case on different sides of the argument to Brexit, I think it behoves all of us, to make sure that the language that we use reflects the values that most people share, which is that we are welcoming of people, especially who have come here in need. And just to reflect on this for a second, in this city, 1 million people who live in this city come from other European countries. And they work in our National Health Service, and they work in our private sector. They are our neighbours, they are taxpayers. And the language that I sometimes hear about people and them themselves feeling that they're being told to go home, I think is something that should give all of us concern, regardless of where we sit on the Brexit question or on Donald Trump.
Okay. You, sir. No, the man next to you. Yes.
Hi. Sorry. Is Theresa May in a position to negotiate with Trump? A lot of things have been mentioned. What about Trump's green light given to Israel? Whereas in Palestine, a lot of homes have been demolished, and they're using the illegal occupations, lands occupied under illegal occupations, to build 4,500 homes.
And what are you saying? Because of that, Theresa May shouldn't speak to him?
No, what I'm saying, first of all, you know, Theresa May is not in a strong position to speak to him because obviously you've got Brexit, and she's looking for a trade deal with Trump.
Okay.
So the gentleman mentioned that she will speak to him and tell him about the British values. But what about, would she speak to him about the Palestinian cause? And
James Cleverly.
Well, I don't have the running order of what they're going to discuss, and it would be impossible in any one meeting, particularly an introductory meeting, to cover the full gamut of world affairs. But I tell you one of the things, there's a lovely bit of transcription from when the United States of America sent troops into Grenada, which was actually sending American troops onto British soil, to all intents and purposes. And he got a dressing down by Margaret Thatcher, and there's a wonderful transcription of what was basically a one-way hairdryer conversation where Margaret Thatcher told President Reagan in no uncertain terms how displeased she was that American troops were doing that. That's what a special relationship means. It doesn't mean it's one-way traffic. It means that we, as the United Kingdom, can speak frankly to the United States of America through its president. I think that's a very, very important
But you remember that when Winston Churchill met Truman and started talking about the special...
No, I wasn't there.
You'll have read about it. Maybe not. When Churchill met Truman and started talking about the special relationship, Truman said, to Churchill's dismay, "We'll pass that to our advisors." So this idea of a special relationship may not be all it's jacked up to be. The woman on the gangway there.
Thank you. So no doubt that Brexit, both Brexit and Trump presidency will affect immigration. So something relates to me. I say, when everybody, all the media, talking about how bad Trump is, I'm also trying to look at from this person, what is good, what he's saying from his, is, you know, everybody's got good, you know, strengths and weaknesses. So a good thing he's saying is America first. Every country's leader should look after their people first. Then regarding immigration and wars, I think the developing countries, immigration, mostly the corrupted leaders, they are the driving force of the immigration in the first place. So nobody wants to, you know, immigration is not the solution for everybody. So I think he's saying, I'm hoping, you know, what from he's saying is message come across to the world, that you have to look after your own people. Then it doesn't mean close the country, so then deal with one-on-one what you're good at, you know, what you,
Okay.
you know. So that's one more point.
So you're not wholly opposed to what he's been saying?
No.
No.
He seemed a very honest person. At least what he's saying is clear, so nothing, hidden agenda.
Right.
If you look at the details and maybe able to deal with him, the situation you present him.
I'll take one more point from you, sir, there. Yes.
I think we're missing the point of the visit, really, in terms of the... I don't think Theresa May's going over there because she's a cheerleader of Trump's values. We're just about to go into a very big negotiation with the EU, and it just pays to be a shrewd... well, if you're going out to see a customer, you want to be through the door before the rest of the competition, and therefore Theresa May wants to go and see Donald Trump before other nation heads. Because we're just about to go into a big negotiation with the EU, we'd rather have the US behind us or talking about, on a high level, a trade deal.
OK. Shall we go on to another question, I think? Yeah, no, you have a quick say before we do.
Carrying on from that man's point, Britain has just, I think, as naively, opted out of the world's biggest trade deal in the single market. And do the panel think that she will ever get as good a deal from Trump as we had in the single market? Or will it be some kind of Trump-down deal that she'll provide? Sorry, that he'll provide.
OK. Well, it takes us to the Brexit issue. Let's have a question from Sophie Petzel, please. Sophie Petzel.
Regarding Article 50, do local MPs have a moral duty to vote with their conscience, even if it goes against the majority of their constituents?
The issue, of course, being that the Supreme Court said that Parliament had to decide. It couldn't just base the decision on the referendum. So do local MPs have a duty to vote with their conscience, even against the majority of their constituents? Angus Robertson.
Well, I'm in the fortunate position that I'm going to be voting in the same direction, I think, as 62% of the electorate in Scotland would wish me to, who voted to remain in the European Union. And the reason why I will vote against what the government is proposing, incidentally, I brought it along, so I don't know if people are aware of how flimsy this thing is. That's it. That's it.
Well,
this is the biggest...
What's your point?
This
it's
is,
short
well,
or what?
Well, the point is...
Brevity is sometimes rather good thing.
Well, I think on the biggest decision, potentially since the Second World War, to be giving a green light to leaving, as the gentleman just suggested a moment ago, the biggest trading bloc in the world for an uncertain future, that regardless of whether we voted remain or leave, we need a little bit more detail than one side of paper.
Well, can you read it to us? Just read it to us.
By way of comparison, in Scotland, people here will be aware, we had a debate and we had a vote 2 years ago on Scotland's independence. And the proposal involved a white paper. This is it. I brought it along. You might agree with it, you might disagree with it. There were 650 pages of detail, and I think we all deserve that level of detail on such a big issue.
Please don't start reading that out, because we'll be here all night. But just read out the bit of green paper, because all it is an enabling bill.
Indeed. And
can you just read it out?
Well, it won't take long.
No,
Clause 1, power to notify withdrawal from the European Union. The Prime Minister may notify under Article X, Y and Z of the Treaty on European Union the United Kingdom's intention to withdraw from the EU, and then goes on that this Act may be cited as the European Union Notification of Withdrawal Act 2017. What's perhaps more interesting, though, is in the explanatory notes. Because do you know what it goes on to say on one of the biggest issues that we are facing now? That this bill is not expected to have any financial implications. Now, again, regardless of where you were on this debate, that on such a big issue, we're expecting Parliament to spend less days scrutinising such a big issue with no white paper having been presented to parliamentarians or members of the public to scrutinise. I think this is not the way to go about making a big decision, and that's why I will not be supporting the government on the issue.
James Cleverly.
That bill, the Article 50 bill, which is designed to do nothing more than start the negotiating process, has 133 words on it. Angus criticises it for not having enough words. Well, the bit of legislation enabling women to become members of Parliament had 70 words in it. Are you suggesting that that didn't have enough words in it either? What this is about is starting a process that has been discussed at length on the floor of the chamber of the House of Commons, in pubs and in people's homes all over the country for months and months and months. This is the start of a process. There will be a white paper. You're comparing an enabling bill to a white paper. You're intentionally mixing the things that you're comparing one to another. There will be plenty of time to debate this.
When will we get the white paper? When will we get the white paper?
There's a 2-year process.
So when will we get the white paper?
I don't know. I
It's
don't
not
know
good enough. I'm sorry, on such a big issue, we need the
this
details.
isn't a big issue. This issue...
This is a big issue. I'm sorry, it is. Where's the white paper?
This issue is about starting the negotiating process. That's what this bill is about.
And what about the question Sophie asked, which is, do MPs have a duty to vote with their conscience or with the majority view of their constituents?
Oh, that's a simple one. MPs...
Really?
Yes, absolutely. MPs should always vote in the way that they believe to be in the interest of the country as a whole and of their constituents. You, of course, must vote with your conscience.
That's not the same thing.
Now, that is...
You're saying in their interest. So do you know better than the constituents who voted other than you in your constituency? Is that what you're saying? You're voting someone's interests?
No, this is a very... Yeah, we're representatives, we're not delegates. This is a very... I mean, this is a point that's been debated many, many times. And members of Parliament have to vote in accordance with what they genuinely believe to be right by their own consciences. We are not there to be the delegates of our constituents, and there will be times when we vote in what you might know not to be a popular decision in your constituency, but which you believe to be right, and that is the duty of MPs.
All right, the man in the middle there. Yes, you.
I think the government is inherently not wishing to give Parliament as a whole a say in what is, the most important decision to go before this country in generations. The whole way the government has gone about it in terms of keeping their cards close to their chest, and Brexit means Brexit. It's all sound bites. We've now got a white paper which has got as many words in it as you could probably put in a tweet, and it's frankly absolutely abysmal.
All right, leave that. I want to come back to the issue of how people should vote. Diane Abbott. The Labour Party is in some confusion, isn't it, over this issue?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No, he's the
in a lot of confusion over this issue.
I have always voted with my conscience and often paid a price for that, not least within my own party. But on the issue of the referendum, we have to be mindful that MPs voted to have a referendum, and to say that because the vote went the wrong way, we are going to ignore the votes of millions of people up and down the country, I think that would be a blow to democracy. I know that I support Remain. I know that most people in this part of London supported Remain. But what does it say to people in the North East or the Midlands or the North or former coal mining areas if we say to them, you voted and we're going to ignore you? I am very concerned about this type of Brexit under Theresa May, in accordance to Tory values. I make the point that Angus makes. I was in Parliament for the debate on the Maastricht Treaty, which was just a revision to the EU treaty. We debated that for 42 days. We're going to get 5 days to debate coming out of the EU altogether. That demonstrates to me how arrogant Theresa May is, how much she doesn't want to involve Parliament, how much she wants to bulldoze things through. But I repeat, however I feel about leave, particularly Tory leave, there's a democratic issue here, and the Labour Party is clear about the democratic issue.
So the Labour Party, led by a man who, when he was a backbencher, defied the Labour Party whip 428 times, is imposing a 3-line whip, compulsory whip, to vote for Article 50. And various people say they're not going to do it. What's going to happen? More resignations from the shadow cabinet, presumably.
What actually happens will be a matter for the leader and the chief whip. But I just repeat, we're here in London saying we can just ignore what people outside the capital and the big cities think. I think that real democracy sometimes means accepting difficult decisions. We will be fighting to get the best Brexit we can. We'll be fighting, first and foremost, to do something for the 30,000 EU nationals living in this country, which have a terrible shadow of uncertainty over them. We want their situation regularised. We'll be fighting for regular reporting back. We'll be fighting back for a meaningful vote at the end of it.
Mainly fighting each other, Diane.
No, no. If you weren't in
Susie,
London,
go on. Let her say.
Susie, if you're not in London, you sound as if you're sneering at what people genuinely feel about.
I don't live in London.
After the Leave vote itself, your view of some Leave voters wasn't exactly complimentary in terms of interpreting it as a vote against. As a vote against wanting to see less foreign people on the street, if I recall the quote. Can I just say, I'm pleased to hear. I'm pleased to hear that you've adjusted your position. I think that's healthy. But I think as a working class voter, and I just want to speak up as a working class Leave voter, I'm not furious about everything the whole time. I don't dislike foreign people. I would like the issue of EU nationals, as you say, to be resolved satisfactorily, because it seems unfair. I think the reason why Theresa May, her approval is so high at the moment compared to Jeremy Corbyn's is this is all about trying to take the pulse of the country. And Theresa May is trying to work out what do the majority of that majority think. Now, I think it was a radical vote to leave the EU. The idea that you would make that vote but somehow want to stay in the pillars of the EU, which are the single market, the customs union, freedom of movement, just seems a little bit illogical to me. So I think that she has the pulse of the country at the moment.
All right, hold on. I want to hear from some more Monteros, and I'll come to you, Susie. You in the checked shirt there in the second row.
Yeah, personally, I think Brexit's going to be the death of the Labour Party because Jeremy Corbyn hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He doesn't even keep you guys informed.
Susie Boniface.
It's a fact. Yesterday, Paul Blomfield was asked what Corbyn's stance was on the Daily Politics show, and he said he didn't know. And that's your Brexit secretary. It's crazy.
Susie Boniface.
Well, to go back to Sophie's question about MPs, whether they should vote with their conscience or not, this isn't a conscience issue, like, say, abortion or something like that. This is an issue where the public have already, in their constituencies, have all made their feelings known. And regardless of how we voted, and regardless of how much the Labour Party disagrees on what day of the week it is, we are all Brexiting now, whether we like it and whether we don't like it. What is in all of our best interests is for that Brexit to go as well as it possibly can do and for us all to get the best deal out of it. For that to happen, we have to have maximum scrutiny in Parliament. So what Angus is talking about, having as much detail, is a good idea. However, right now, we don't have any... No one's got a clue, because this is not...
Susie,
can I finish my point,
yes.
please, Angus? What you've done now is you've merely... If anyone in this room is divorced or got divorced in their families, someone has issued a notice that you're going to divorce the EU. Right? At this stage, no one has had the financial forms out yet, no one's compared pensions, no one's discussed custody, and you're already asking the children which person they want to live with and where they're going to go next. You can't decide now, OK? Well, this is merely the start of a very long and very expensive, very drawn-out process. To have a conscience vote now is almost immaterial, because it's further down the road. It's the detail that you need to vote on.
I'll come to you, Angus, again in a moment. The woman there, please, in the second row from the back.
It's almost a trend within the SNP party not to want to accept the outcomes of referendums. I voted to remain, but I accept that the outcome was to leave, and I don't think that the MPs can then change the decision that was made by millions of people democratically.
Yeah. Okay.
Angus Robertson, is the SNP really just heading towards divorce from the UK on this issue? Is that the reason that you're...
Well, first off, I totally recognise that there was a majority across the UK to leave the EU. There was a majority in England and there was a majority in Wales to leave the EU. There was a majority in Scotland to remain in the EU. And that's why the Scottish Government is working quite hard to try and reach a compromise with the UK Government to find a deal that can satisfy all of us. And I think on such a big issue, it behoves a British Prime Minister and Scotland's First Minister to try and find that arrangement. That's why documents being published, more information has been published on this by the Scottish Government than has from the UK Government to date. That is where things are now. Now, what happens when the UK Government then says, well, I'm sorry, we're not prepared to respect the result in Scotland, we're not prepared to work with the Scottish Government, we're not prepared to find a solution that satisfies everybody across these islands, because let's be realistic
like
about
saying
this.
we want to, like saying we have to recognise the people of London who voted exactly the same way.
Realistic.
I mean, what about why Scotland?
Yeah.
What about London?
Yeah, well,
what about...
I support the case by the Mayor of London, that the UK government should negotiate with the importance of the City of London in mind, so that a deal can be reached that is not disadvantageous to the city. Or similarly, for the car industry in the north of England. We all know there's going to have to be an arrangement there's all going to have to be an arrangement for Northern Ireland, and that's no laughing matter, because it's super important that we get a deal that works for Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. Now, we need to recognise that there are different priorities in different parts of these islands, and that's why at this stage, before getting onto an independence referendum issue, the Scottish Government is aiming to try and reach an agreement with the UK Government. And I hope the UK Government is prepared to do that in good faith.
How long till a referendum? How long till another Scottish referendum, which you look as though you're heading for?
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. If there is going to be a Scottish referendum, it's because the UK Government has not been prepared to work with the Scottish Government, which has an elected mandate to try and reach this deal. And I think that's why the UK Government should work with the Scottish Government. That's what they say they want to do, so they should do it.
Angus, you've said that Theresa needs to find a deal. I wrote that down. You said that Theresa needs to negotiate a special relationship for London. You've then said that you're not going to vote through the enabling legislation which enables her to start the negotiating process. So how is she meant to find a deal and negotiate on behalf of London and the devolved administrations when you're going to vote against the bill that enables her to do so?
How can we possibly give a green light to a Prime Minister that is not prepared to give us any details whatsoever of what she is prepared to negotiate? If she were to outline the fact that she can reach a deal, no, actually sit down and have negotiations. Now, the Prime Minister says the Prime Minister says she's actually going to meet with the devolved governments on Monday, and that is a good thing. But we actually need to see some progress. Why on earth would we allow her to have carte blanche to do whatever a UK Tory government wants to do without us having any assurances whatsoever that she is going to negotiate in our interests?
Mainly because she perhaps accepts the majority who voted Brexit. The woman there in the second row from the back.
Angus mentioned majorities, but he forgot to mention one specific majority, which was that the majority of Scottish people voted to stay in the UK, and the UK as a whole voted to leave the EU, and Scotland needs to accept that result, just like London.
Okay. The man in white there. You in the white pullover, whatever it is. Yeah.
What I want to know is that dodgy Diane kept saying that there's going to be a Tory Brexit that she doesn't like. What is a Labour Brexit?
A Labour Brexit
is one where no one can agree.
If you let me finish, yeah. Well, first of all, a Labour Brexit would be a Brexit which put jobs and the economy first.
What is that?
Well, if you let me finish. A Labour Brexit is one that put jobs and the economy first. It will be a huge blow for manufacturing and a huge blow for the City of London if we come out of the single market and also completely come out of the customs union. But let me just say this, because Jeff it will be. And we are putting jobs and living standards first. Theresa May is putting the issue of immigration first, which brings me to what Jeff said. He kind of hinted something about immigration. Let me just say this. There is no question that some people voted to leave about immigration.
But you made a blanket statement. That was the point. I don't disagree with you at all on that, that some people did. But it was a blanket statement.
Stop saying let me make. Just make the point, if you would, before we go on. Just in the order to get through topics. No, just let her speak.
There's no question that some people voted on the immigration issue. There's no question also that we saw a rise in racist attacks, including in this city, in the wake of the Brexit vote. On the question of immigration, the audience will forgive me that if the daughter of immigrants, I remind them that immigrants have made London a great city.
No one's disputing that. Nobody's disputing that.
Our party will defend them, including EU migrants, although it's a very negative climate to say these things.
All right. Well, we've been round that course several times. Not always when you're on the panel, but often when you're on the panel too. I think we should move on because we're... No, I'm sorry, but we're 2/3 of the way through the programme, and because of the woman who rang up to say, please not Brexit, please not Trump, I think we should try something else. Just before I do, we're going to be in Wallasey next week for question time, and we're going to be in Torquay the week after that. So if you'd like to come to Wallasey or Torquay, the way to do it is on the screen there. I'll give those details again at the end. Kamal Patel, please, let's have your question.
Should GPs be able to charge certain patients for procedures or aspects of care?
Should GPs be able to charge some patients for procedures? It was a suggestion that made the news today from a GP in Oxfordshire that family doctors should be able to charge patients for evening and weekend appointments, and this would be a way of helping the financial problems of the National Health Service. Jeff Norcott.
Yeah, I think they should. I know it's deeply I know what a religion the NHS is, but also these are unique strains. I mean, there were some statistics I saw in the Times today that there are 14 million missed doctors' appointments a year. And it's difficult to know what you do with that. I mean, it's to say that there's not an obvious solution. There isn't an excuse to do nothing. I mean, I don't think you should necessarily have a hall of shame outside the doctor's surgery where people just speculate on what you might have gone there for. But I do think that you should do something pragmatic. And a lot of people, when you talk about reforming the NHS, they look at, they hold up Sweden, they hold up Northern European health services as an example. A lot of those countries already pay for a share of their healthcare as well. And I think this is a unique time of people having a bigger population in this country, greater life expectancy, and to think that you can carry on doing what you did before seems a bit naive to me. So radical solutions have a place.
Do you think we're... Are we heading for a paid-for National Health Service?
No, it's not paid. I mean, it was the question. It was about GP out of hours, right? Which I think.
Whether patients should pay for certain aspects of their care.
I think, yeah. I mean, the report I read was about GP out of hours surgery, but I think it's a reasonable place to start. Possibly, to be fair to people, with the same exemptions that you would have for dental care. That if you're pregnant, unemployed, or elderly, then obviously you're exempt. But it seems reasonable that, given the rise in demands, that people should contribute.
Susie Boniface.
Yeah, come on, are you talking about just out-of-hours stuff, or things like when people are very, very drunk and get ill as a result of
that's
some of their own behaviour?
Yeah, something like that. Or, as Jeff mentioned, not attending appointments, millions of missed appointments. So certain things, certain aspects of...
And this doctor's idea was for evening and weekend appointments you'd pay?
Yes, well, that was what the article was about, but I think they also mentioned about certain things like vasectomies and mole removal. So
yes.
There comes a point, the thing with this is there's one issue where someone thinks, well, that sounds like a good idea, OK? You've got a 24-year-old lad who's gone out and got tanked up and he's fallen over in A&E. It's his own stupid fault. Why doesn't he pay for his care? There's someone who wants to go to their GP at 9 o'clock in the evening because they're terribly busy all day at work and they've got plenty of money. Why can't they pay for it? And the problem is where you draw the line there. Because at what point do you say that someone's behaviour has got them in hospital? Do you charge a diabetic who has not regulated their blood properly for going to hospital? I've got a condition where I have sometimes epileptic seizures, which is caused by insomnia and anxiety. If I let myself get in a tiz and I have a seizure, do I have to then pay for it because I've caused it myself? Do smokers then have to pay for their cancer care? And do you think that every single person who is going to want to go to the doctors at evenings and weekends is automatically working in a good job the rest of the time? Perhaps they're shift workers, perhaps they're not that well off, perhaps they can't necessarily afford to pay more than we're already paying into the NHS. So no, I don't think we should be paying for that. But I do think that as a nation, we have to pay more for our NHS. It is the lowest cost healthcare almost in the world, I think, for what we are getting. We are not putting enough in. And all the politicians from all the main parties think it's anathema and political death to suggest to us that we should pay more for that. And I think if they just said to us, do you know what, a penny more in income tax, you'll all have a perfect NHS that will look after you much, much better, most of us would be fine with it. I think they should just do that.
You're in the front then. And then come to you. None in the front row here.
I'm sick and tired of hearing the reason why the NHS is failing is because we're living longer. We live longer because we have a good NHS. Yes. When is the government going to stop hiding behind the newspapers and let everyone know it's the PFI schemes and the funding of social care that is causing this struggle in the NHS at the minute?
OK. And you, sir, with the glasses on, yes, because you had your hand up earlier, yes.
I sort of despair at the tone of the debate because it sounds good in principle, like, it really does. Like, I feel like it would tick a lot of boxes, but I think it would be a bureaucratic nightmare trying to maintain that type of system. I think the biggest thing we need to talk about, I'm talking to the politicians directly here, we need to look at PFI, what is going on with that, because we've bailed out the banks, maybe we should bail out the NHS now, I think, because it's just getting bad. It's just getting really, really bad. I'm okay, I'm young.
What is it about PFI, the Private Finance Initiative, that you object to? What are you saying?
It's interest rates. If you look in the papers, what the interest rates were, a lot of these were signed by both Labour and the coalition government, but I don't know what the status of these things are. Anyone, I don't know if anyone's taken out payday loans, thankfully I haven't, but you hear about what those things are like. I think the comparison of PFI being like payday loans over the NHS, I think that's what's going on here, and we need to bail out, and just because the government can borrow money a lot cheaper than what the PFA
point made. And the woman to your right, your left, rather.
Going back to the idea about paying for specific aspects of healthcare, what about those that have a lack of economic resources? Are they then denied necessary healthcare?
You're absolutely right.
Angus Robertson.
Well, I think there's a point that's been missed about this. The question was actually being asked about NHS GPs, because, of course, at the present time, if you want to go and have private procedures, whatever those might be, you can do that. So, you know, let's not lose sight of the fact that you have that option if you want. And I go back to this lady's question here. It's about the thing that we value. I think we all on the panel value a national health service. We understand the pressures that it's under. Do I believe that GPs being able to charge their patients within the NHS is the thin end of the privatisation wedge? I absolutely believe that that is what it is, and I'm not in favour of that happening. I think we should have a public national health service, free at the point of need.
All right. You said with the red tie on there.
I think there are two different issues here. The first issue is that if you have to go to weekend or evening, because, as you said yourself, you can't do any other times, then you have the right, because you contribute to the National Health Service, to do so. On the other hand, if you want that service because for other reasons, for example, you are drunk or because you missed the appointment, then you should be treated differently. And I like the idea that if you miss your appointment and you don't phone in advance to cancel it, then yes, you should be given first warning, second warning, then I'm sorry, you are now at the back of the queue, you have to apply again to show a little bit of commitment and appreciation to the fact that you are receiving a service while others can't receive it.
All right. Diana, but what do you think of that point we've heard often put about people who don't turn up, that they should be penalised, that would help?
Well, there have been schemes to deal with this, like texting people and reminding people, but on the general point about people paying for GP services, I'd be against it. And I'm against it for this reason. And Jeff talked about, you know, exemptions. But the people that you would put off going to see their GP are exactly the people that should go and see their GP. The elderly, the poor, people with children. Let me just take one issue, cancer. We have the worst cancer outturns in Europe because people get diagnosed late. It seems to me if you start charging, the danger is people will put off going to the GP and will be diagnosing serious issues like cancer even later. People often go to the GP about one thing and the GP discovers another thing. Anything which puts people off going to their GP cannot be good for health outcomes in this country.
Okay. You sir.
I was glad you referred to the dental system, because I went to see my dentist earlier this week, and a tooth extraction under the NHS costs £53. £53. This is an indication of the direction of travel. This is where we are going. People have been talking about the idea that there are moves to privatise the NHS. Actually, this process has been going on for quite a long time, and that's the direction that we're moving in. I think we need to really be alive to the real forms that this will take. It's not going to be done at a stroke. It's not going to be done openly. It's going to be done bit by bit and gradually acclimatising us to the idea that we have to pay for this and pay for that.
And is that a good idea in your view?
No, I think it's an extremely bad idea.
Extremely bad.
And I think it's the way that we get led blindly into a position that none of us, most of us, absolutely do not want.
James Cleverly.
You might want to make a note of this in your diary, because it's not going to happen very often, but I agree with Diane on this one. The thing that concerns me about this proposal. Remember, it's a proposal that came from an NHS professional, not from the government or a Conservative politician, is that it would, as Diane says, put off the very people. I've sat in an ambulance call handling centre, and I've listened to the kind of calls of people demanding that an ambulance gets sent to them because they've got, a broken finger, and they get very, very irate. And what is remarkable in its absence are the voices of the elderly, who are often very, very conscious that they are imposing upon others. And Diane's completely right. If we allowed the impression to be created that that you shouldn't go to the GP if you feel unwell or you're concerned about your health, I think that would have a very, very dire consequence. So on this one, the answer, I think, is very, very simple. No, there should not be charging.
We've got a few minutes left. I want to go on to a last question. Ross Curtis, please. Ross Curtis.
Given the recent strike chaos and the recent announcement in the increase in fares, should the railways be nationalised?
Should the railways be nationalised? Southern Rail, affecting a lot of people in London, has been on strike for weeks and weeks, on and off, and the Tube's been on strike in London again. So the question is, should the railways be nationalised? Susie Boniface.
Yes, but with one caveat, Ross, which is that the government effectively is running Southern at the moment, and they're not doing a terribly good job of it, are they? They've given the franchise to go via Thameslink. They've guaranteed that company £1 billion a year. They are taking all the financial hits of the strike themselves, the government, i.e. us, the taxpayer. So all the strikes and the fare penalty repayments and everything else, that's all coming out of our pockets. It's not coming out of the train operators' pockets. They have a guaranteed £1 billion a year no matter what.
So nationalising wouldn't make any difference?
We should nationalise the train services because that would be infinitely better than the situation we have now. However, you have to have it run by somebody competent, and that's not this government. Okay. Certainly not Chris Graham.
Jeff Norcott.
Well, I think the strike chaos is... I mean, just today on the Central Line in London there was a strike, and while even though I vote Conservative, I respect the right of people to form unions and to take strike actions. I think when you...
Thanks.
Absolutely, but there are no socialists when you're waiting 25 minutes for a tube. That's what all I would say. Even Jeremy Corbyn would be throwing down his red book in disgust. So I can speak, I suppose, for the normal person. It's very hard, with this strike action continuing. There is a sympathy well that could run dry eventually, and I think that's already beginning to happen.
All right, the woman up there. Yes.
Hi. East Coast was run by the government for many years, and they did a very efficient and comfortable service and paid millions back to the Treasury. Now it's run by Virgin, and the Treasury does not benefit anymore.
OK. Ross, what do you think? Ross Curtis, what do you think? You asked the question.
Obviously, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not actually from here. And obviously I was going to talk about Southern, but obviously everyone has already. About East Coast, as the lady said, for instance, David, if I, tonight, after the show, had to go home, right, it would cost me £150 for a single ticket to get to Durham, right? £150. Look at the franchises, that have ran East Coast for the last 20 years. It's been a disgrace. An absolute
Think it'd be cheaper if
disgrace.
it was the government ran it, if it was nationalised?
I think it could be in the long term. There's no reason why it couldn't be.
Well, the government doesn't need to make a profit, and the train companies do.
Is there not talk of, James, of Southern Rail being taken back into...
Well, Chris, it's worth remembering certain things. Ross, I'm a little bit older than you, I think by a couple of months, maybe. Don't
flatter yourself.
I know. But I'm old enough to remember, Jeff's a professional comedian, I'm old enough to remember when the absolute staple of the British comedy circuit was the dire performance of British Rail. Okay? The idea that somehow the government's running big entities like the rail service is an automatic guarantee of success, I think, unfortunately, is not the case. So I think that as a simple solution to a complicated problem is not the right way forward. One of the things that's also worth bearing in mind is the bit of the railway system which is run by the public sector, Network Rail, has been one of the problems in many of the difficulties we've had with rail around the country. I think I think Chris Grayling's absolutely right to say that Network Rail and the franchise holders now have to work properly in an integrated way to reduce the delays, to get better quality service. I think that's an absolute step in the right direction. I just don't buy the idea that bringing the railways back into national ownership will make them any better than they are at the moment, and I suspect it could well make them worse.
OK. Diane Abbott.
Well, on Southern, I mean, I think the situation in Southern is a scandal, has been a scandal now for a very long time, and I think at the very least, Southern should be handed over to Transport for London. I know there was a dispute today, but generally, Transport for London as a whole does not have the problems that Southern has. I live on the London Overground route, and it's an immaculate route run by Transport for London. On the general question of the railways and ownership, somebody said, what does the Labour Party stand for? Actually, one of the things we stand for is bringing the railways back into public ownership. And we believe it could be done at minimal cost. As each of these franchises falls due, we just bring it back into the public. And the truth is, under the current system, at the very least, millions and millions of public money is being spent to subsidise private operators. So what do we stand for? Bringing the railways back into public ownership.
You, ma'am.
I think we need to make a decision on this, because at the moment it's not acceptable. There's a breakdown in communications. What consumers have been going through for the last few months, it can't, well, almost a year, it can't carry on. So whether it's taken back by the government or something else, someone's got to change the situation.
Unless it does just go on. Yes, you, sir, in the second row from the back there. You haven't spoken, yes. And then I come to you on the... Yes.
Yeah, just slightly going, rewinding the tape. Does America really care about our relationship with America? Because it seems to me...
I thought we were talking about the railways now. This woman who rang up and said, please, not Trump and Brexit, she's going to be... She won't like what you're saying. I think... Yeah, no, I think we'll... Let's stick to this. We've only got a minute or so left. I apologise to you, but... sorry you didn't get in earlier. Yes, you there, the woman there. Yeah.
So I think a real concern is that provision wasn't made for sort of failures of the franchises. So we're talking about it being brought back under public control. Actually, Diane's point is that would have to happen when the contract falls due. I heard that it would need to be something like there being no service for 6 months for us to be able to take back control of those franchises.
All right. Angus Robertson.
Well, it seems to me there's an immediate problem and then there's a potential medium-term solution, because we're mixing up two things again. There's the southern issue, but there's also the ongoing strike action in London that people have been raising. So on that, on the first point, I think everybody wishes for better industrial relations. So all the efforts that are being made to try and encourage people to get together, I totally agree there is a right for people to be represented by their trade union. It's also right that Transport for London is trying to provide the most efficient service, and I think we need to support London's mayor in trying to get an improvement in the industrial relations to get a solution. Now that is a solution to something that we might be able to gain in the short term, so I think we should aim for that. On the more medium-term issue on are the franchise holders providing an adequate service, well, clearly in the south of England that's not the case. And that's why I don't want to get involved in sort of inner English politics, because there's a devolved issue in Scotland. I would suggest that you should be open to allowing public sector bids, and if they can provide a better service, then one should be open to that. And that's something, but that is not going to fix the short-term problem that so many of you, and those of us who spend a little bit of time in London as well, are having to suffer.
OK. Last point from you. You've had your hand up some time and you haven't spoken yet. Yes.
This is exactly why we shouldn't privatise the NHS, because it won't make any difference to the service. So...
OK. Well, thank you for that. Our time's up now. We've got to stop.